Welcome to episode 106 of the Grip Strip Podcast, Eclair Reigns and Sports Entertainment Motorsports Edition of the GSP. My name is Philip Matthew, and I'm here with my co-host Josh Fine. What's going on, man?
I'm doing great, Phil. We had a really great debut of Formula One racing to start the year. The new Formula One car performed pretty good. There was actually some passing for the lead in the middle of the race, and not just a one lap pass, but they actually had a little bit of a battle with Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, and then we had some WWE racing later in the day with NASCAR at Atlanta, the Cup Series. Talk about that. Talk about the great IndyCar race that we saw with Joseph Newgarden, last lap pass, turn 3 and 4 at Texas Motor Speedway. Even though grip strip kind of ruins two wide racing, if you can get it right, if you're brave enough, that Highline Hero pass in turn 1 and 2 is really nice. Saw Kyle Kirkwood doing that and everything. We'll get into it, but really excellent weekend of racing for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's what we live for. It's part of the reason why we have this show. With all the different things that are going on in motorsports this past weekend and going on this coming weekend. Uh, Josh has already went over. We're going to go over Formula One at Bahrain, NASCAR at Atlanta, IndyCar at Texas. You had the 12 hours of Sebring 1,000 kilometer for the WEC, 12 hours Sebring for IMSA, F2 and F3 at Bahrain. You have Moto 2 and or MotoGP, Moto 2 in Indonesia. We'll do a little preview of supercars at Simon's Plains or Simmons Plains. Sorry for those who listen in Australia. I apologize for that right there. We'll preview the Coda triple header for NASCAR this coming weekend. Hopefully, it isn't a torrential downpour during the Cup race because that was a effing nightmare last year. Saudi for Formula One. It'll definitely not be as dramatic as it was last November for many reasons. I don't think they really want that. Maybe Drive to Survive does, but not most people who are actually motorsports fans at one of the crappiest circuits ever made. Uh, Probably talk a little football depending on the time because there's been more trades that have taken place here in the last week that are insane. Um, Probably get into that. Josh will do his sim segment and we'll close the deal. But first of all, Bahrain F1 2022 season begins, and Charles Leclerc put it on pole for Ferrari, basically confirming the pace that they had during testing, and went out there and had a battle with the defending world champion asterisk, and the defending world champion insisted on doing his usual move of just driving as hard as he can and basically hoping someone will crash into him or trying to crash into somebody. But Charles Leclerc's racecraft, superior racecraft, stood out along with the pace advantage that the Ferrari had over the Red Bull and more or less had the race won. There was the Pierre Gasly, which was the start of something that we didn't know for sure. But Pierre Gasly's uh, Red Bull powertrain, I guess is what they're calling it, uh, imploded and the car started melting, and he parked in a spot where they had to bring out a full safety car, which in turn brought everybody back together. There was pit stops and everything, but even with that, Max Verstappen could not make anything happen uh, in regards to the win. It was going to be Charles Leclerc basically, and then both Red Bulls basically shit the bed within the last 5 laps of the race, which allowed Ferrari to get a 1-2 finish. Um, that was, and then first win for Ferrari in what is it, 3 years? They said, and then you're talking about for the Ferrari 1-2, I think it was like 4 years for them. So I mean, that's pretty big deal there. We'll get into the results here of the Bahrain Grand Prix 2022 version. Charles Leclerc, the winner, led all but those 2 laps were led by his teammate Carlos Sainz, who started third, finished second. The Mercedes duo of Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, third and fourth. Kevin Magnussen, fifth for Haas, which is crazy. Valtteri Bottas in his debut Alfa Romeo finished sixth. Esteban Ocon finished seventh. Yuki Tsunoda from 16th, eighth, and the only Honda powered car that finished. Fernando Alonso ninth. Zhou Guanyu was the last point scorer, just by 9 point. Well, yeah, so he had Mick Schumacher there. Uh, in the end, it was Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. They had uh, an advantage most of the day over their Red Bull counterparts. And then in the end, of course, the Red Bulls didn't finish there. But I think the initial part there, Josh, is Charles Leclerc has proven over time that he has this ability, has led races, has won a couple times, of course, in his career. But to go out at the start of this season, kind of confirm the pace and win his third Grand Prix of his career after a couple of lean seasons where he's finished eighth and seventh in points, to now go out and be, for the first time in his career, lead the world championship. It's a pretty big deal. And also kind of putting it on the defending world championship team, at least for the drivers, uh, and making them have to sweat right now in regards to their situation.
It was definitely a challenging race for Red Bull trying to match the pace of Ferrari, and I think with what we saw on Sunday, Ferrari they definitely backed up their pace, their speed that they showed during preseason testing. They were always at the top of the board or close to it, and then they came out here to Bahrain. Charles Leclerc got the pole, and they won the race and got a 1-2. So that's how it ended up happening, and then early on in the race, around lap 17, we saw Max Verstappen try to go for the lead. He picked up the lead, but then later back on the other part of the lap, the Ferrari was able to take back the lead with Charles Leclerc. Excellent racecraft, being able to give up the position and then basically cross right over and get it back. And he was able to do that 2 consecutive laps, basically, or 3 consecutive laps there. And that was a great sequence of racing, of course. But then, Max Verstappen, kind of used up his car and then started having issues with power steering a couple laps later, and then later on after Pierre Gasly had his issues, started to have engine issues, and then after they went green, basically had to drop out of the race due to his engine problems, and then of course also happened to his teammate there, Sergio Perez, and really bad start for Red Bull to start the year. But that's how this goes sometimes. This happened to them before, and they're gonna have a challenge now to go out and defend their title from last year. But I think Ferrari is winning this race. This is a pretty big statement. Of course, backing up what they did in preseason testing, but then also going back to last year when their battle in the midfield against McLaren, and we've been talking about could Ferrari challenge Red Bull and Mercedes in the team championship points, constructor championship. So definitely a good start there for Ferrari being able to be right up there next to those two teams and starting out ahead of them actually after this race. So that's a good thing. I think Mercedes they didn't have the pace. I think there's probably some issues maybe with their power unit being on the pace of Ferrari and even Red Bull, but they were still able to get a good finish and get third and fourth. So they got something out of nothing, and they were able to have a better race than maybe what they had anticipated, and certainly still have more championship points that will help them later on if they end up having a championship contending year. So for Mercedes, they still have a little bit of work to do, but it's better than what could have happened. And then, I think also for McLaren, they were the other preseason team that looked really good. They had a disappointing race. Both cars finishing out of the points with Ricardo and Lando Norris. So not really a great start to the year for McLaren. Didn't have the pace all race, and so you have to wonder going into next race here at Saudi Arabia. Can they get it back? Can they compete in the top 10 or get points at least? Um, be up there in terms of pace. So that's something you have to look for. And then I think another team that kind of was showing their abilities in preseason testing, but we thought maybe it was an anomaly, was Haas. And they're also with Ferrari with their partnership with constructors partnership, their the power unit and everything. And for Haas, that's a big major move for them to be able to finish in fifth place and get in the points with Kevin Magnussen. He backed up what he did during testing, and then also Mick Schumacher, even though he didn't finish in the points, still a pretty good finish for him. Best career finishing 12th for the Haas team. So really great improvement. I mean, I guess you can say Nikita Mazepin was definitely uh, a weight for that team, definitely a lead weight, and was slowing those cars down. And now that they've removed the Russian backing and the Russian driver, now they've gained speed again. So maybe now Haas can actually compete in some of these races. We'll see if they're able to sustain that pace, later in the year, or if maybe this is just a one-time thing. We'll have to see. But really great racing all around for Formula One. Really excited, glad it's back, and glad we get to see this new car finally race against each other during these races.
Yeah, there was lot you went over there, Josh. I mean, the Mercedes piece. I mean, well, we could go. I'll snake back to Red Bull's situation. Fact of the matter is, Ferrari had them more or less this whole weekend, and then Red Bull, you know, the defending champion, was screaming on the radio the whole entire race. Um, Akin to what how certain his fan base likes to go and talk about how Lewis talks on the radio, but then Verstappen was definitely not working at his best. I would say he wasn't at 100%, and he was yelling at Jean Piero, Den whatever the hell his freaking last name is, GP. They call him uh, the whole entire race. I think there was issues with get switching the tires on. He took too slow of a lap. Then what is it? They had Ted Kravitz basically go and debunk the notion that if he had went faster on his out laps, would have mattered. Um, Straight race pace and what we saw from Leclerc basically speaks to that. Plus the notion that I brought this up on the Grid Talk podcast with uh, George and uh, Tom Downey and and Aaron Harper during the post race recap, that they were holding back during testing, and I thought they were sandbagging. I brought it up here that they were sandbagging. What their sandbagging is they have issues. They might have issues with this power unit, and three of the four cars fell out of the race. They'll say there was a fuel pump issue for two of them, but excuse me, I was having this conversation with one of my coworkers. When you're talking about three power unit components, what does this do to those components? When you're talking about 23 races, you got Domenicali already out there in the news today or something saying, "No, we want to keep on expanding." I'm like, on what fucking planet are you going to keep on expanding? But that's a whole story for another time. Three power unit components, 23 races, the logistic. I mean, I don't know who the idiot is that made this calendar. The logistics of this calendar make no damn sense to be the premier form of motorsport. It's pretty god awful. But if Red Bull's having problems right now and this continues, it's going to be a real issue. The car's good, obviously, but they're gonna have and the notion that they're gonna hold an advantage over Mercedes for the entire year is a fallacy, because the reality is Mercedes had the better car generally at the start of the season last year. Then in May was the switch for Red Bull. Red Bull took off for months. Mercedes made adjust changes. I think they did some power unit changes, and in the last six, whatever, basically from the U.S. Grand Prix on, the Mercedes was the better car. Lewis was the better driver. The Brazilian Grand Prix was total proof of that, and he was going to win the world championship. So, so the notion is Red Bull may have a better car right now, but with the development cycle that exists, even with those cost caps and all that, they need to watch with this engine power unit situation. Mercedes cars doesn't run very well on the bumps, so that's going to be interesting when they go to some of these street circuits like Saudi or Miami or I don't know. Insert track here. Coda is going to be a disaster. They'll suck there unless they get rid of this porpoising issue. But Lewis was nowhere during practice. Got to fifth. George Russell struggled in qualifying, qualified behind Valtteri Bottas, Kevin Magnussen, amongst others. So people are already going to ride him. And I'm like, dude, it's his first real qualifying session in a Mercedes. He had one other qualifying session, and that was when, of course, Mercedes was in a different more advantageous spot, and he should have won that race. But his team screwed him over. And but the difference is, unlike the previous driver in that car, who basically usually does his work on Saturdays, George does his work on Sundays, moved up and um, made the most of the situation. They took the best of the situation in regards to what happened with Red Bull and were able to finish third and fourth. Podium number 183 for Mercedes, or I mean for Lewis Hamilton, which is insane to think about why he's one of the greatest ever. And then you have, of course, K Mags getting that result on Sunday. I mean, it was a huge result. I mean, for people who hate Egghead, the fact that's one of the only positive things that's maybe come out of Russia in a long, long time is the fact that Egghead gets fired. They used him and his daddy's money to develop this car. And now Kevin Magnussen, who 2 weeks ago didn't have a ride in Formula One, is driving that car and finishing fifth, which is nice to say the least. And right now, as Josh mentioned, with the Ferrari customers are kind of in a good situation with their power unit, and their cars seem to be all right too. Will that last? We don't know. Haas at times has been at this level years ago. It's kind of gone away, but Mick Schumacher is going to get points eventually because that car is good enough to get there. Uh, Botas, as I mentioned, along with his rookie teammate Joe Guan Yu, getting points. Good situation for them to start the year, and to get double points for Sauber Alpha. It's advantageous for them in their battle or amongst where they have been, which is with the Williams of the world, and um, I guess. Yeah, I mean, it's really Williams and Haas. So, but they have so what they got 9 points. So they're only 1 point behind Haas right now. Alpine got double points, so they got 8 points. So right now they're all kind of clustered together. They're ahead of AlphaTauri, the Williams, the McLarens, and of course the Red Bulls and the Aston Martins, which were the worst cars I think in the whole entire circuit. But Nico Hulkenberg, who hasn't driven a Formula One car in a couple of years, outqualified his teammate. That should tell you all you need to really know about Lance Stroll. But the Williams were kind of out to lunch. They didn't have much anything going. Albon beats Latifi, but then that's not shocking. The nightmare scenario was McLaren. Daniel Ricciardo didn't even make it out of Q1. And Lando Norris didn't make it out of Q2, and their cars were dog shit. And I'm not sure what's going to happen with McLaren. The talk during the show, the grid talk shows like they have a very tight uh, setup window to where the car is really really good. They could probably put a lap together, but it's not something that's like consistent, and that's an issue. Trying to get pace out of these new cars. Um, outside of that. I mean, the Williams team's Williams. Red Bull's situation, they'll be fine over time. The Mercedes customers, though, having problems is going to be something we have to look at. The drive ability of the cars and how they handle these bumps and handle the aero and downforce will be seen racetrack to racetrack. I figure certain tracks will be better than others in regards to the current ground effects circumstance. But the cars look cool. Cars are fast looking. It's a positive. I think this uh, new regulations for people who hate Mercedes are really happy because Mercedes were nowhere in Nowheresville for most of the weekend. But the difference is they're one of the best teams, so they'll figure it out. And Lewis still got a podium with the car that was the third best car on the grid right now. And so we will see what happens. We're going to preview the Saudi Grand Prix here in a little while, but I mean, the one thing that kind of was funny about the race, I mean, now they have the new race direction. Before we move on, they have the new race directors, and there's like, there's track limits is the white line, very direct and very straightforward. Put that out there, but in the end, the one thing that kind of bothered me about the race is in the end they went full Massey, decide to throw that they had to throw the full safety car because of Gasly's car relative to being able to get him off the track. Okay, fine. But in most forms of racing, there isn't a wave around unless the car is ahead of the leader. And like let's say in NASCAR's case, you're ahead of the leader because the leader's pitted and all these cars decided to stay out. Okay, fine. You're ahead of the leader. We'll wave you around. In Formula One, they just wait to wave everybody ahead of the second place guy, but behind the leader, past the leader to get their lap back. And it takes forever for in Formula One, which I don't know why. But there to me, if you're there and you've accumulated that space, condense the field, go and maybe cut the DRS thing to like a lap during the once the race starts, and make the effing guy go and have to pass those cars. If Leclerc had earned that gap, let him keep that gap. In the end, that's competitive. That's what racing is. If Verstappen's supposed to be as great as everyone makes him out to be, or certain segments of the population make him out to be, let him pass all those MFers and go and try to beat Leclerc. He wasn't going to. So then instead, they just go and make it an arcade bullshit, get rid of all those cars, and put them right on there. In the end, it didn't matter, granted. But to me, I think it's very artificial, and we're about to get into artificial racing here in a few moments' time. But the notion of like that wave around rule just bothers me. The way they do it, I don't think it's necessary. I don't, and it takes too long as well. And I think it kind of fits certain other racing series and the way they do things, and I think it's stupid. And back in the day, that wasn't the case in certain series there, Josh. And I don't know what your thoughts on that are before we move on, or what any other thoughts you had on the Grand Prix. I know you said, but that wave around rule just really bothers me. It also gives me PTSD from freaking Abu Dhabi, which also is a problem too.
And there's definitely a lot of inconsistency with the way that they enforce the I guess the procedural rules for getting the field back together. But I think like in my experience from iRacing, like cars that are ahead of the leader on the track, right? You just circle back around and you catch back up to the leader or to the pace car, and then if you're a lap behind, obviously you just stay behind the leader, and then once they get reformed up for the restart, either lap cars go to the back or in some cases they get line up next to the leader there. And I think with Formula One, they do a really convoluted way of lining up the cars for whether it's exiting a safety car, virtual safety car. just seems like there's too much that they're doing to try to get the field sorted out. And like you said, it fits the drama aspect and creating drama, unnecessary drama. Um, Liberty Media kind of in charge of all this, trying to get the American uh, audience involved in everything. Um, just do it the way that makes sense, I guess. Don't make it harder than it needs to be. Um, just do the procedures that make sense, and then shouldn't have any problems. But yeah, I'm not really happy about that either. Just because like it takes time away from the race. Too, because like you spend caution laps instead of racing laps, trying to get the field sorted out. And then on top of that, it feels forced, like you said, and then it does bring back memories of last year because they actually didn't follow protocol last year, of course, when Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen were fighting for the championship in that race, and the either do it consistently, or come up with a new way of doing it. So just a lot of unnecessary rules, I think, procedures, I think, that make it very 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 WWE like you said, and that of course does lead into our next topic, which is WWE racing in America.
Yeah, where when you have Marcus Smith going full Vince McMahon and saying we're in the sports entertainment business, and when you consider that, that we're going to talk about the IndyCar race too, and where we get our name from, and there's sports entertainment involved in what is one of the crappiest racetracks on planet Earth. You have a new crappy racetrack in Atlanta Motor Speedway, which they've made into basically a slot car track, where you're gonna have pack racing the whole entire day. You can't pass anybody until somebody wrecks or whatever the hell. Um, you had the Folds of Honor Quick Trip 500 at Atlanta Motor Speedway, which saw, um, you know, pencil neck Byron go and get his third career win for in the inbred university car. Gives Hendrick Motorsports a third out of four teams with a victory so far. So they've had a good start to the year for sure. And then William Clyde Elliott the second is the defending winner at Coda. So there's a possibility they could all have a victory here shortly. But Byron gets his third win, second on a theoretical super speedway type track. Led over 100 laps, led the most laps. Ross Chastain led 42 laps out of tire failure because BadYear has to show themselves somewhere, and they do it at a brand new racetrack. He had a tire failure while leading, but came back to finish second, continuing his strong start to the 2022 campaign. Kurt Busch finishes third in his 2311 Monster Energy Toyota. Daniel Suarez finished fourth, so gives Trackhouse two top fives, cars in the top five. Corey LaJoy gets his best career finish in the Cup Series. I think they said something amongst the top three series. That's the best finish he's ever had in the top three series. So gotta give him credit there. Clyde in sixth, Busher seventh, Truex eighth, Logano ninth, Alex Bowman 10th. Um, I mean, you look at I'm trying to look at whoever else. So yeah, Elliott led 29 laps. I see anybody else here. Stenhouse led 22 laps. Oh, Richard. And then Kyle Busch led 21 laps, but he definitely was not happy about having to be there, having to participate in the racing at that racetrack. And he made it known. Other drivers were similar in their feelings. I mean, in the end, when there was only 25 cars running at the end of this race, the rest of them are in the garage, and the vast majority of them are all involved in multi-car wrecks. I mean, Gagson wrecked by himself, so that's just a waste of Matt Collig's money. Um, and I figure that's going to be a trend this year. There, you got the Dillon brothers both went out in the same wreck there, just after 100 laps. Custard, you got Kyle Busch and They were involved. Separate wreck. Gumby and Stenhouse were knocked out. Then you have Hamlin and Larson are knocked out in a crash. Reddick. Then you have Todd Gilliland, who got DVP'd, and then Cody Ware wrecked by himself there. So, I mean, the race itself was not really that compelling in my estimation. For the short attention span crowd and LCD people, I think they probably liked it. But if you're talking about actual pure racing, that was akin to just driving on the freeway and following her along and doing whatever. It wasn't racing. It's like Tony's thing. It's like he says that it's racing. If you want passing, you go on
Go
the
on the
four.
freeway, the 409 or
Yeah, go
whatever
on
it's
the
called.
409 or whatever the hell, 405 or whatever the hell it is, and we can go on the interstate. We can do passing. Well, I don't think there's passing on the interstate. You're just driving when you consider how most people drive anymore. You're just driving around aimlessly and you're just waiting. And some of them, they're so bad, they're just waiting to hit something. Well, it's super speedway racing. So I guess that's what it is. You're just waiting to hit something or destroy equipment, which is what super speedway racing has been forever. And for the second time in what, 4 or 5 weeks, that's what they did. Um, I wasn't impressed by it. I think it was a waste of time. I think the track, I mean, it is SMI, so they gotta come through in making gimmicks that are generally very corny and probably unsafe. And so that's what they got. They narrowed the track up so you don't have anywhere to go. You're making it so the cars are all going at a relatively similar pace, so where they're not going to be able to make those moves. You won't be able to get away from anybody. It goes with my feelings about super speedway racing forever. I don't think it's racing when you're at the mercy of somebody else to have to pass somebody. You should be able, if you have a fast enough race car, to be able to pass somebody. If you can't do that, it's just a waste of time. And that was 4 hours or nearly 4 hours of time that was one of the most worst races I've seen in a long time. But hey, it probably gets a good rating by on Gluck's poll or LCD fans liked it. But I don't know, Josh. That just was pretty weak in my opinion.
And I can see your points, and I think overall I agree with it. But I mean, I guess watching it, in my opinion, because we were talking about this offline, of course, and I mean, to me, the reason why I said to you on Sunday is like, well, I think maybe this is palatable. I could live with it. I mean, there were parts where I was watching it and the lines, I guess, that they're running, of course, they're basically running drafting trains. For some reason, it actually reminded me of the pre-restrictor plate era of super speedway racing with Daytona and Talladega, where you actually ended up running the high line a lot of times, and then if you wanted to slingshot and pass, you had to dive down to the bottom, and then you jump back to the top, and that's kind of what I guess, like, when I turned it on and was watching, it seemed like that's what they were doing a lot of times is the high line ended up being the fast line, and then if you wanted to go, try to pass, you had to shoot down to the bottom or form up a line on the bottom to try to pass in the middle of, the turns and then jump back to the high line, coming out of the turn onto the straights. But, yeah, I think overall it's just, it really a convoluted way of, or not convoluted, that's the wrong word, more of a contrived way of doing things. It's the way it's being done now, they're basically restrictor plate racing this racetrack. Yeah, there were 46 lead changes, which is actually a record not only for Atlanta, but that's actually the most lead changes to occur on a non super speedway race since 2000. The 2000 UAW 500 at not Atlanta, but at Charlotte had like 45 lead changes. But they were actually, it was you actually passed, and it wasn't not like this. It was you actually had to drive and everything. Which, to be fair, I think this race there was a little bit of handling involved in this race. But it was definitely a interesting way of doing it, I guess, or non-interesting way, whatever you want to put it. Just I think it was mostly handling because you had to lift out of the gas to keep out, away from running into somebody, and that of course changes the handling dynamics when you get out of the gas and have weight shift and everything, and in the car. Whereas, back in 2000 running at Charlotte, the car was bumpy and everything, and the car really moved around the racetrack and everything, and you had to find a line to try and pass. And this, is more of momentum racing where you certainly had to back up to another car to generate another run and then get around him. Um, so that there's a lot different dynamic and everything, and we've seen races at Atlanta in the past. Go back to 2011 with Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson, their battle where they were really struggling to drive the car around the corner and everything, and they had a great battle for the lead in the last laps, and in that race that was a pretty exciting race. Go back to 2000, 2001, Dale Earnhardt over Bobby Labonte, Kevin Harvick over Jeff Gordon. Even 2004, I think they had a great race there towards the end where there was
Carl
a
Edwards.
Carl Edwards there won that race, I believe, but no, he didn't win that race. His first race was Atlanta 2005, which that was another good finish. But I think what I'm thinking of is there's a clip on YouTube where about like 6 laps to go at Atlanta in 2004. This is the race after the Hendrick Motorsports plane crash. Jimmy Johnson won, but they had like a 3 wide battle for like second, and I think 2 lap cars were involved in it, and they basically like I think the whole lap they were like 3 wide against each other, and this is back when they were definitely running close to 850 horsepower, getting closer to 900. They had the short spoilers. The car suspension actually could move around. So, they actually had ground clearance on those cars. And that was really impressive. But, this overall, you're just running in a drafting train, trying to figure out when to make the move to win. And, when you rely on that, it takes a lot of like the driving instincts away of when to find or when to take a good line to try to get around a guy, um, and everything. And I mean, there is some skill to this, but certainly not at the level of skill that we would expect from Atlanta or really any other racetrack. So, I think I agree with a lot of the drivers that said, "Oh, well, let's just leave it to this. Let's not expand this idea of turning more mile-and-a-half tracks into basically restrictor plate tracks. Let's just leave it to Atlanta." Ross Chastain said that. Kurt Busch, I think he was saying that, and then he was also advocating to go back to the other package that they were using at Las Vegas and Fontana. So I think that's a reasonable take there to go back to the other package and see how it races on the the mile-and-a-half repaved track. So there's a lot of feelings about it. I think with this race, but ultimately I think overall for me just a lot of mixed feelings. Like some good, but then also a lot of bad as well, and kind of shows you the I guess the duality of things with this type of racing, and ultimately the direction that it could take the sport in.
I fear considering what some tracks that might be getting taken off the schedule and some of the tracks that may be added. What are we trying to do here in regards to racing? I think the racing overall this season has been pretty good with this new car, and when it hasn't had to be contrived, they've had some good runs, good finishes. I do agree with what Kurt Busch said in regards to running the whatever the 650 or whatever the hell 710 package or whatever the fuck horsepower it is uh that they run at most of these tracks with the 4-inch spoiler. I think that would have been a better um representation of the racetrack, and a possibility that they could have gotten more than just having a pack race going. You could have possibly gotten the wall working too, which was interesting how anyone who tried to get up on that high line right against the wall, they'd wipe out. Um, that might have been a case been able to be brought in with the other package versus what they had here this weekend. But I guess if you're a fan of William Byron, if you're, I mean, I'm sure if you're a fan of Trackhouse Racing, you like it, or Corey LaJoy for all seven of his fans. And I mean, if you're a fan of Will Byron, I mean, if you like looking at burnt toast, um, the that's it. I mean, he's literally. I mean, his only redeeming quality is the fact that he bangs Blaney's sister. Other than that, I don't really know. I mean, William Byron, there's nothing there. He can drive iRacing. No offense to you, Josh. I know you do, but like, yeah, so yeah, and I mean, he's a dork, and that's great. And he has the personality of this percussion gun that I'm using right now because I got tightness in my neck. So like this thing, I'm holding it up, and you'll see it on the YouTube on our Grip Strip Podcast YouTube channel for this episode. This has more of a personality than William Byron, but then he drives for Hendrick Motorsports. So Jeff Gordon, you know, I mean Jeff Gordon is that. So it's like okay, you know, but whatever, fuck it. Who cares? He ain't gonna do anything in the playoffs anyways. So let him have his win. Um, it's early in the season anyways. The notion of possibly having 16 different winners kind of still exists because none of the Gibbs guys have won yet. You have Clyde hasn't won yet. Harvick, amongst others. You got, you know, there's some wild card people. I mean, of course, Chastain, the way he's been running, the Tyler Reddicks of the world. Those are two cars that I think are going to be up there, along with the possibility of Suarez getting his first win, which would piss off a lot of maggot morons and let's go Brandon Beagle. But along with the notion of Bubba almost winning that race and then getting sent up in the fence, the fact of the matter is he could have won that race, and that would have been hilarious too. I was rooting for that. Um, but the fact of the matter is, uh, there are a lot of options here to win, but we'll see what happens with that. The Xfinity series was, I mean, we talked about that. Yeah, we talked about the product, the bad year tire failures, of course. I mean, it's bad year. What do you expect? You have testing, you got all this testing, and you still can't make a tire that can last. It's you gotta love it. And we talked about, yeah, Chastain Trackhouse. It's a big deal. I mean, I think before we move into Xfinity, my well, like it's a big deal for that organization, for Justin Marks, for Armando, aka Pitbull, Mr. Worldwide, Mr. 305, Dale, Guy Ocho, going and uh, making this team, and then now they have a two-car team. They have the whole Ganassi shop and all, and Ross Chastain looks like he's been shot out of a canyon. I mean, it's just he's at a different level here. He looks like he's driving a Nice Motorsports truck with freaking Phil Gould crew chiefing it the way he looks this year. But I think it maybe is the potential finally being realized for Ross Chastain in his case. And then with Daniel Suarez, the guy won an Xfinity title. Gibbs had him for years. Tony signed him, I guess, minus the fact that he's with a PK daughter. The Amigos have a lot to root for there. I mean, that team is, I guess, proof positive of what this new car really is brought to the table. I think Colleague's another one that's kind of benefited from this new car. You look at the RCR group in general; they look very good because of this car. I mean, Stuart Haas is a great example too. Eric Almirola's final year, he started out well. The Briscoe goes and gets his first win. Harvick looks like he's not the same Kevin Harvick as we had a couple of years ago, but he seems to be back on track. There are other teams that haven't really been there for a while that are up there. Spire Motorsports, which was absolute god awful. They got a top 5 finish on a track that's not Daytona or Talladega. You know, that I mean, that's the other than Haley's win, that's the thing. You know, it was at Daytona, it was rain shortened, so that's the best finish they've ever had, really. Uh, I think the new car is helping, and I think the new car will get a good test about this new car and what it'll race like and what it'll be about here at Coda uh, this coming weekend, because this car has GT3 Trans Am TA2 GT3 characteristics. This thing might be really, really cool on a road course, especially a road course that is definitely not a stock car um, type road course. It's more an open wheel road course here at Circuit of the Americas this coming weekend. Xfinity Series saw Keebler Gibbs get another win. Uh, utilizes or takes advantage of Ryan Sieg. There's irony in that. And using up Ryan Sieg to go get that win. He only led one lap the entire day, so that's convenient. Uh, there was 3 drivers. AJ Allmendinger led 41 laps. Gagson led 38 laps. Trevor Bayne led 38 laps. Allmendinger won one stage, and Josh Berry led the other, but got taken out in an accident. In regards to the finishing order, Austin Hill was up there for a while. Lost out on one of the restarts. The uh, the results of the Nally Cars 250: Gibbs, Hill, Allmendinger, Herbst, Castle, the top 5. Mason Massey, Brandon Jones, Kyle Weatherman, Sheldon Creed, who pissed off a lot of people on Saturday, and then Sieg was your top 10. Just outside the top 10 were JJ Ely, Ryan Vargas, and Dale or Jeffrey Earnhardt, amongst others. Uh, I mean, you're seeing Mason Massey, Kyle Weatherman for DGM Racing, dual top 10 finish there, best finishes for both of them in their career. But Keebler Gibbs, I mean, he was theoretically, he was a pseudo favorite. I mean, outside of, I guess, some of these veteran types that were in there, Junior Motorsports and the like. I think everybody really thought that Gibbs was the guy, or a lot of people did. I mean, I picked Josh Berry, but then that's my own fandom and bias. And then kind of like Sheldon Creed, if he could have figured it out. Well, Gibbs has the cars, Gibbs has the support, Gibbs has grandpa that he already knows he's going to be driving the 19 car next year in cups. So it's like, well, I'm free rolling. So I get to go and run over whoever I want to run over and do whatever I can. And I know I got a guaranteed ride because my grandfather's Joe Gibbs. And I mean, to be fair about the kid, he he is a douche. He drives like a douche. He's 4 foot tall, but I mean, he has shown talent. I mean, it's not that he isn't talented. He's just douche. That's the thing, and that seems to be a characteristic of this new generation. I think a lot of them are just really, really douchey, and they don't know how to help themselves, and they don't try to. They just kind of they either own it or they just do it because it's like, well, it's a take it or leave it proposition. So Gibbs won that deal, but there were other cars I think he could have possibly gotten the job done, given if circumstances went their way there, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm going to say about both of these races, the Xfinity and Truck, I mean, I think they're both the same type of racing. And same in Cup, they're all the same, really. There wasn't people thought there might be a difference between the Cup race and the Xfinity, um, but I think they're both really the same. And overall, just pack racing throughout. Maybe there's a difference in how the car drove, but it didn't. There was no real visual difference when they raced on the racetrack. So it was not really compelling to watch. I mean, I actually did not even watch Xfinity. To be honest with you, I saw just the ending of it, and it tells you all you need to know with all the crashing that happened, and then the last lap pass, and Ty Gibbs drives away. from the field, and the rest of the field is side by side behind him, and he takes the win. So that's how you play the game here at this racetrack. If you can get ahead, if you find a way ahead coming to the last lap, you take it, and then hope that everybody else behind you is side by side, because that's your best friend right there, to be able to get away from the field and try to win. And, going back to, what you were talking about in Cup, Bubba Wallace, I mean, had to take the opportunity to win, in that race, and, I guess maybe he thought he could wait until the last lap, and I think overall with, this package at this racetrack, you can't really wait to the last lap, and that's really the same deal in Cup at Daytona, or, really at Daytona in general and Talladega. But I think in this track, in particular, since it's a lot shorter, has as much distance to work with, you definitely have to start setting up your move before the last lap, so that you're either, in front of the leader coming to the white, or you're at least side by side with him. And that's, how both of these races played out in Xfinity and in truck. Both of them had either a last lap pass or coming to the last lap pass. So that's what you got to do to be able to make the move, to win. But Ty Gibbs made the move at the right time and only needed to lead the lap that they pay you the most money for, which is the last lap. So he was able to go out and win, and now he's secured a spot in the playoffs for the chase and Xfinity, and that's how it rolls for the rest of the year. And then he can basically just free roll the rest of the year, which might be bad for everybody else, because we've seen how he raced last year, and how many races he was able to win, just being a part-time driver. So now he's a full-time driver. He's got a lot more to work with, now that he's gotten his playoff securing win out of the way. So we'll see how that goes. Austin Hill had a chance to win, but didn't come out with it. But we'll see, the rest of the year what he's able to do. Feel like he's been pretty solid so far in the 21, but definitely this is a chance for him to win, and didn't come out on the other side. So unfortunately, they'll have to go out and try to win other races down the line. And then AJ Allmendinger, definitely he was a contender in this race, having led the most laps, but failed to secure the win as well. So we talked about him. His season so far this year has been sort of lacking in results, and I think this is probably one you have to look back on, and feel like this could have been one that he could have won. So considering the results he's had so far this year, so we'll see how it goes the rest of the year. But overall, it's just the same racing that we saw on Cup took place in Xfinity and in trucks.
And Ty Gibbs, that was his second win of the year, actually. So, I mean, he was already locked in. Now he's just getting more bonus points. He won Vegas as well. But whatever. His sixth win of his career. It's going to be pretty much what this is going to look like. One consistent thread is going to be the 54 car in victory lane, conveniently. It was Kyle Busch for years, and now it's going to be Ty Gibbs. Uh, as Josh mentioned, the truck race was similar. Difference was I mean, it was a Toyota. It was Kyle Busch Motorsports. Uh, John Hunter Nemechek helped Corey Heim pass teammate Chandler Smith to give Corey Heim his first career win in the Truck Series. Toyotas took the top four spots and five of the top six there, with Corey Heim, Ben Rhodes, defending series champion, second, Ty Majeski in third, Chandler Smith fourth, Zane Smith starting his continuing his good start to the year, minus of course the DQ there in the second race. In fifth, Friesen sixth, Priest seventh, Tanner Gray eighth. So the guest front row DGR trucks finished fifth, seventh, and eighth. Kraus ninth, Self 10th. So that was the top 10 in trucks. Of course, Friesen led the most laps, won one stage. The other stage winner was John Hunter and Nemechek, but he got into problems and then manipulated the finish. I mean, I guess outside of the stupid wave around rule, having trucks that are up there that are a lap down at like 10 to go, you can't. There has to be some sort of edict put down where it's like you're not supposed to be able to manipulate the dang race. I mean, I guess in this case, like you've been saying, Josh, and what we've seen with this drafting, it was by design um, to have him up there. And in turn, he screws Chandler Smith out of another victory, which would have given him more bonus points and taken him farther away from John Hunter Nemechek, who's had a nightmare start to the year in the truck series. But he'll be able to try to make it right this weekend on a road course if that's possible for him. And I'm trying to see who else. Anything else that really stood out? Friesen led the most laps, and Chandler Smith and Corey Heim led whatever. Chandler Smith led the third most laps. Corey Heim the second most. Then you have Grant and Finger led double digit laps, and John Hunter led double digit laps. Uh, we'll go to the Indy cars at Texas Motor Speedway, which was a great race. Saw attempts to make things happen on the outside line, but obviously the outside line was way too sketchy, especially in the grip strip, and that left a lot of teams scratching their heads and a lot of drivers and a lot of wrecked race cars, um, which is part and parcel what you'd figure would come from Texas Motor Speedway after all that was going on, trying to get the track prepped, and they really couldn't prep it the way they needed to, or they just didn't try because, of course, it's Texas Motor Speedway. Uh, the results of the XPEL 375 at Texas Motor Speedway Sunday afternoon. The Joseph Newgarden won by 66 66 thousandths of a second. Last lap passes, Josh mentioned during the beginning of the show, get Joseph Newgarden a win there. Um, he's now up to fourth in points after two races. Marcus Ericsson finished third. Will Power gives the Penske cars 3 out of the top 4. Scott Dixon fifth. A certain seven-time NASCAR champion Jim Johnson getting his best career finish in IndyCar with a sixth. Alex Palou seven, so three Ganassi cars or four Ganassi cars in the top seven. So Ganassi and Penske, wouldn't you know, um, dominating the top seven. Pagano, best of the rest. Root beer float head was there visiting friends and family and was going to hang out, but instead got called in by Green Rehal and the High V people to drive the 45 after Jack Harvey had an accident in practice and couldn't race. And Renus VK finished 10th. David Malukas, last car on the lead lap in 11th. I mean, you talked about Kyle Kirkwood. He was up there, but in the end ended up in the wall. Devlin Defrancesco got the butt buddy driver of the day by diving low into a three wide situation that ended up with his 29 car hitting the apron and going back up into Elio Castro Neves and Graham Rahal, destroying all of their days. And it was definitely not ideal, but that's Devlin DeFrancesco. It's part of what happens when you bring cash to the party, but no talent. Um, Looking at some of the other people, I mean, Colton Herta was a lap down. Pato Award was a lap down. He's won at Texas last year. Trying to look at great. Was it Felix Rosenquist? Started on pole, but had a mechanical issue. So it was interesting day. Sato wrecked. He started up in the top five. So those are some of the people that stood out there. I mean, Alexander Rossi fell out of the race 11 laps in with a mechanical problem, which is really, really bad. You got to wonder what his viability is at Andretti Autosport going into 2023 and beyond. But um, with that, yeah, I mean, Joseph Newgarden has proven over time he's adept at all different forms of racing on ovals. He had a crash there a couple of years ago and had to wear wrist support and went out and dominated Iowa Speedway. He's a tough guy, but he's also a really, really good driver. And I think this is a statement not only towards Scott McLaughlin, but I think towards the rest of the field in the IndyCar series that Joseph Newgarden's ready to go in 2022, Josh.
I mean, this was a really exciting race in my opinion with the way, I mean, even with the grip strip, like I said, being a show, um, and now we've seen it at Texas, and I think, Joseph Newgarden, he stalked, he stalked, Scott McLaughlin all the way to the end and passed him, at the right time, and it was really a matter of time, I feel like, and I think for McLaughlin, it's kind of a lack of experience leading on ovals, especially towards the end, with getting in the way of lap traffic or having lap traffic in the way, wasn't able to get around lap traffic soon enough, and that allowed Joseph Newgarden to close back in, and then of course he didn't have enough room in turn 3 and 4, and then wasn't able to have the pace, and Newgarden was able to take the high line, even though there's not a lot of grip there, but that was the only way that he could pass, and certainly he was able to hold it there long enough to make it work, and he was able to pass him for the win there. Um, so lack of experience, I think, for McLaughlin, and then I think on the other end shows the experience that Newgarden has now in these race cars, driving ovals. It shows his veteran prowess, and definitely for him is uh, a veteran move for sure. Um, it shows that Newgarden, probably is going to be leading the way for Penske very soon. Once Will Power finds his way out of Penske eventually. I mean, he's getting up in age, so I figure eventually he'll be out. But that's definitely a move that the lead of the team would do. So credit to Newgarden for doing that. Um, overall, you talked about Jimmy Johnson in this race. We talked about it leading into the show. Yeah, what would that young Jim Johnson guy do? And he ended up with a sixth place finish, and almost came out with a top five. Scott Dixon passed him there at the end, but it was a really exciting oval debut for Johnson. Think he got help from a lot of the wrecks, but that's the way it goes sometimes in IndyCar racing, and he was able to take advantage of that and still get a top 10 finish out of it. So great oval debut for Jimmy Johnson. And I was excited a few times when he was able to use the high line to try to pass, and I was like, let's go, Jimmy Johnson. I was really rooting for him, which 10 years ago was rooting against him. Now I'm rooting for him, which I really like. Um, I guess once he retired from the 48 car, start to get a lot of respect for him driving the 48 Indy car. So we'll see how he does at Indy, and hopefully he puts on a good show at Indy for us. Really excited to be able to watch that. And I think there were some other guys that they played the Highline Hero game very well. I was talking on Twitter, Renus VK. There was a restart where he was hooked up, and he was able to go out and pass multiple cars on the same lap. And I think there was one sequence where he did the 2-for-1 special and passed to get up to the lead. And no, actually he got passed. Sorry, he got passed by Will Power. And Will Power took two cars and passed both of them in turn 1 and 2 on the high line. So another high line hero there. Add that to the list. But I was really impressed with there was a sequence there where Rinus VeeKay was on the high line passing cars, and um, it was really impressive what he was able to do, and his car was definitely hooked up there for that sequence of laps. And the reason why I keep saying that Highline Hero, I mean, I that's the way, like, to me, that's exciting to watch in IndyCar racing on oval tracks. We see it at Indy when you can pass on the outside. We've seen it at Gateway last year when you pass on the outside, and it's really impressive to do, especially here at Texas. The low groove is very narrow, and there's not really a middle groove. Then the high groove is the grip strip, which is non-existent for these Indy cars, ironically. So when you're able to pass on the high side like that uh, at this racetrack, to me, it's really impressive. And in iRacing, we'll talk about it later, but for me in iRacing, that's how I make a lot of my passes is using the high line, because that's where all the momentum is. And if you can get it right, you pull up behind a car in the draft on the straight, and then instead of getting arrow wash, you keep going through the corner. And even though it's the long way around, you keep the momentum, and you can stay either close up behind him, or if you have a lot of speed, you can and you're in traffic, you can use the high line to your advantage. So that's why I find it exciting to watch, and why when every time I see it, it fires me up watching these cars pass on the high line, and it gives me a lot of respect for the drivers that are able to pull it off and do it successfully. So yeah, that's my, I guess, passion. I guess when you see IndyCar racing, that's the part that I guess evokes the most passion out of me in there. But that's the excitement of oval track racing in IndyCar racing. But for this race itself, going back to Scott McLaughlin, I mean, led a ton of laps, and it's not really surprising because I mean I called it, I think, beforehand going into this race, based on testing. They were pretty fast during midweek testing and leading up to this race. Um, but the lack of experience, uh, losing your first oval win like that's got to be heartbreaking. But at least if you're gonna lose it like that, lose it to a teammate so it stays in house. And they picked up their 600th career win or team win for Penske, so not a bad deal there, of course. And then I think another point to talk about. You mentioned Devlin DeFrancesco's crash there. I mean, that's a stupid move. To make. You don't go. It's one thing to go three wide, but then on the other hand, you can't go onto the apron to do three wide. I mean, it almost kind of felt like Tony Kanaan. Remember 2017 before they messed up the track, and all that. Remember, that's adorable. James Hinchcliffe, kind of reminded me of that crash a little bit, the way that played out, because I felt like that was a very similar move being made there, going onto the apron to try to pass three wide, and obviously not working. Yeah, I think the apron, obviously, you can only avoid accidents. We saw Alexander Rossi avoid a crash a few years ago back in 2019 using the apron, and that does take skill, but can't pass while you're racing onto the apron. So big rookie mistake there for DeFrancesco, and he definitely learned in a heartbeat there. So overall, I mean, for me, even though we've come to expect Texas to be kind of a bore fest, I mean, for me personally, I felt like this race alone was pretty exciting to watch.
And it's part of the reason why IndyCar and Penske want to stay there. They seem to have a willing customer there at Texas Motor Speedway, even with the new management, minus the fact that the track is now not suitable for running two grooves without, kind of praying for dear life or having a certain level of talent that few of us will ever have to make that line work. You could also add the two different corners, and just I don't know why they decided to do that. That was stupid, but amongst other things. But the race itself was quite intriguing. McLaughlin's continues to do what he did at St. Petersburg. Just that, I mean, as Josh said, the experience factor with Newgarden played a part in why he ended up winning that race. And I think that's a good lesson for McLaughlin if he's in a similar spot during the Indianapolis 500, trying to go and win that race. Um, that will be the experience he uses to go and not be in that same spot come the end of May to possibly go and get that W. there. But for Penske, they're 2 for 2 so far this season. Penske and Ganassi had a great run there on Sunday afternoon. And the next race is Long Beach, so in a few weeks' time. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out at Long Beach for the Acura Grand Prix of Long Beach. First, or first, not first, the second street course of the season. Then they'll go to Baba for the first permanent road course of the year. We'll get into the 12 hours of Sebring, um, WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, uh, going and winning the uh, or going for the 12 hours of Sebring there, which saw Earl Bamba go and win the 12 hours Sebring. Spun out, had issues and traffic, but Earl URL Earl Bamba, Neil Yanni, Alex Lynn. So Alex Lynn and Bamber are teammates for the full season. Yanni, of course, is running the whatchamacall, the endurance races. Um, Going to go through the results here briefly. Earl Bamber, Alex Lynn, Neil Yanni were the winners by 6.471 seconds over Tristan Vautier, Richard Westbrook, and Loic Duval in the um, number 5 Mustang sampling Cadillac. There were 5 of the 7 cars were on the lead lap. Durrani, Nunez, and Conway in the wheel and engineering Cadillac finished third. Ricky Taylor, Philippe Albuquerque, Will Stevens, fourth. Oliver Jarvis, Tom Bloomquist, and Stoffel Van Dorn, fifth. In LMP2, Ben Keating, Mikkel Jensen, Scott Huffaker, and Pierre Matheson wins car won over the Team Netherland, Von Erd, Guido Vandergaard, and Dylan Murray by a lap. And then Dwight Merriman, Kyle Tilley, Ryan DL finished third for the Era Motorsport. Hendrick Hedman, Juan Pablo Montoya, and Sebastian Montoya were in the race in the number 81 Dragon Speed car, but Juan Pablo Montoya got taken off the track and destroyed the race car after Sebastian had his moments, but was back in the garage waiting for his dad. Instead, his dad was coming back in an ambulance because his car was wrecked. Thankfully, he was all right, and I didn't hear anything about anybody else having any crazy issues there. João Barbosa, uh, part of the winning LMP3 team by 48.5 seconds over Baloo, Grist, and Dickerson, JR3 Motorsports, LMP3. And then third place, Goldberg, Rasmus, Linden, Shields in the Performance Tech 38, but they were 8 laps down. In GTD Pro, that was the Corvette racing team, Antonio Garcia, Jordan Taylor, Nicky Casper, over to TR3 Lamborghini and Mapelli, Caldarelli, and Bortolotti. And then the WeatherTech Mercedes of Cooper McNeil, Jean-Marc Gounon, and Mauro Engel. BMW finished fourth. The FAF Plaid car finished fifth with Matt Campbell, Matthew Jaminet, and Felipe Nasr. And then in GTD itself, Fuco, Lacorti, and Serna Giotto in the Centilar Racing Ferrari wins over Michael Skeen, Steve McAleer, and Daniel Juncanella in the number 32 Mercedes. And then Perez, Kompanic, and Villander and AF Corsa Ferrari round out the podium. But the 21 and then the 96 from Turner Motorsport was basically, yeah, an hour behind. So they were basically in another time zone there in the Rolex 24. Go and get into the WEC 1,000 kilometer um, miles of Sebring. Saw the hypercar number 36, Nicola Lapierre, Vaxvier, and Negaru, and the Alpine with the Gibson power plant. And they won by 37.4 seconds over the Toyota Gazoo number 8, which had Buemi, Hartley, and Hirakawa. The other, what is it? Yeah, those are the only two that really stood out. All the rest, Oliver Jarvis, Pearson, Josh Pearson became the youngest winner in 12 hours of Sebring or in Sebring history, in 1,000 kilometer history, whatever, being 15, 16 years old. That must be nice. Galeo, Friens, Rast in the 31 WRT. Another WRT with Habsburg Nato finished third. And as I mentioned so that was in. And then GTE Pro, the Porsche number 92 of Christensen and Estra, finished 9.3 seconds ahead of the Corvettes of Miller and Tandy. Then the Porsche 91 of Bruni and Leitz, trying to go and do that. And then you have the GT Am, which saw Paul Dalana, Pitter, and team in the Aston Martin. Then the TF Sport, uh, Aston Martin of Keating, Latour, and Sorensen. And then the Project One uh, ball or thing of Uribe, Milroy, Barnacote, and GT Am finish out that. And but Alpine winning, beating Toyota was a big deal for them and for this the series for sure. F2 and F3 at Bahrain coming up or this past weekend saw different situations during the race weekend to try to go and get that. Yeah, Saudi Arabia, that's not what I want. Trying to get that's photos of the Kawasaki there came out today. Um, I mean, what is it? 16. So I'm trying to see right here. Give me a second here. I'm trying to bring up the F2 results, F3 results. Okay, there you go. F2. And so in race one, or the in race one, the winner of Formula 2 is Richard V. Shore over Jan Daruvla and Liam Lawson. Boshong Drogovic, Logan Sargent, Yuri Vips, Iwasa Hauger, your top 10. Best American, he has, of course, Logan Sargent there in sixth. I'm looking for other Americans because like 4 or 5. Then in race two, Teo Pocher won by less than second over Liam Lawson, Yuri Vips, Ralph Boschung, Marcus Armstrong, Felipe Drogovic, Logan Sargent, Roy Nasani, Jake Hughes, Jack Doohan was your top 10. Deruvula slipped back to 14th. Fortunate lost a point there. Hauger was finished 4 laps down in 19th. So their next race, of course, will be at Jeddah, and then they'll take a month off for Imola coming up there. In Formula 3, the first race saw Isaac Hadjar beat Oliver Bierman, Alexander Smollett, Zane Maloney, Arthur Leclerc, Zach O'Sullivan, Kyle Collette, Kalen Frederick for high tech, Juan Manuel Correa, and David Vidalis. Kushmini, who got relegated to the back, finished 15th. And then what is yeah, that's about it. I mean, Jack Crawford struggled mightily this past weekend. Hunter Yaney also struggled pretty mightily. So we'll see what happens. in race 2, which saw Victor Martins beat Arthur Leclerc, Gregoire Saucy, Juan Manuel Correa finished 4th. Kalen Frederick finished 10th, so he got more points. So that's good for him. Jack Crawford finished 7th. So, yeah, so that's where it is in Formula 2 and Formula 3 going into their next race. For Formula 3, their next race will be at Imola. Formula 2 will be racing at Saudi this coming weekend. Going into the MotoGP and Moto2, there's treacherous conditions in Indonesia, and trying to go and keep the bike on track and was as much of a battle as anything. Trying to see where all those people, whatever, all that. Miguel Oliveira gets a win for KTM over Fabio Quartararo, Johan Zarco. So 3 manufacturers in the top 3. Jack Miller 4th. Alex Rins joined me here. The Mercedes Suzuki duo finished 5th and 6th. Franco Morbidelli 7th. Brad Binder 8th. Alicia Spargaro 9th. And Darren Binder finished 10th. And Ea Bastianini, after winning the first race of the year, finishes 11th. So that wasn't compelling at all. So what were your? That's Moto GP, Moto 2 there, and trying to go and get into that. The supercars are at Simmons Plains this coming weekend. Before get to busy for that, just want to go and look at that for Simmons Plains. Simmons Plains Raceway, Motor Tasmania, since the closure of the line. Yeah, so Simmons Plains is, I forget what they used to call the track. It was Oran Park, or no, I don't know Oran Park. That's Britain. But Simmons Plains redirects here. Simmons Plains, or then main arms for left out to trying to get into who's going to do what this coming weekend. Supercars. So, yeah. As it stands, yeah, practice 1, yeah. Race 1. From last race was Shane Van Gisbergen, and then race 2 was Chaz Mostert. So we will see how the 2 Holden drivers are able to hold up, via minus all the other stuff that's going on around him. So we'll see what if the Ford can respond with their Mustang, or if there's something that has to be done to make it a little more competitive, a little less top heavy in regards to the Holden bunch. Gonna switch over to the NASCAR at Coda. Josh, I'm going to let you have the floor for a little bit here in regards to what uh, you're looking to see here. Now, they've had a year. Of course, there was no qualifying. They're going to have qualifying this time. There's going to be some other adjustments that they have to make here this race compared to what they had last year. We'll have a lot less practice than what they had last year. So we'll see how that all works out, and maybe you can give some predictions in regards to what you think driver wise for the win, or maybe a wild card, and then some of the other things that'll be going on there at Circuit Americas.
For sure, I think for me, this is the first race, road course race for the for the next gen car. I think this is going to be an interesting deal here. Especially the brand new car going through the race track that it was basically designed to work on. So it's going to be interesting with Coda because this is a heavy race car by by default, but it does turn pretty well. It's designed. It has a IMSA background in terms of actual suspension geometry and design. But I think we may be in for a pretty interesting race here. Um, would have to probably look at for insight on how this car would race. Yeah, like I think you'd have to look at IMSA, type racing here. In the GT classes or a Trans Am type deal of how the race is played out in those tracks or at this track for road courses and just at any road course in general with those series. Um, but it's going to be pretty interesting to see how this car handles on a fairly technical track. I think the racetrack at some points you're gonna have a couple of long straights, like you're gonna have the front straight which is pretty long, um and it's a fairly long length there. I'm gonna pull up the page on Wikipedia so I can see the full layout, but the NASCAR layout here basically is the whole track. Um, and I think you're gonna have some really interesting racing, on the front stretch from turn 20 to turn 1, and then you have the set of S's from turn 2 all the way to turn 10, and then the hairpin at 11, and then the long straight to 12, and then a couple more turns at 13, 14, 15, 16, and then kind of the bend around 16, 17, 18, and 19, and then back to turn 20 for the end. But it's going to be a pretty interesting race. I feel like, especially if weather comes into play, which I don't think is going to be an issue here. But if it does, I mean, we're gonna hopefully we don't see a similar race last year. Maybe they actually will run better in the rain for a road course car if it does happen. But it's gonna be a interesting if that does happen, I guess. And that would be another element, I guess, if it were to rain like it did last year. How would this car perform in racing on a road course with a new tire, and a new car? Um, so that's one thing I'm looking at, I guess. But I think the teams that have been good on road courses in the past are probably going to be good on road courses to start out with for this year. So I think Hendrick Motorsports, I think Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson. I think both of them are probably favorites in this race. Uh, I think you'll probably expect to see them both out front. For whatever reason, Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson are just really good at road course racing. I mean, especially for Chase Elliott, kind of came out of nowhere. Larson, I think he showed some prowess, some expertise before he came to Hendrick, but now especially he's been able to dominate on road courses. So that should be interesting. AJ Allmendinger is going to be back in the 16 car this weekend. So expect that car to contend in this race. Who else that could be a factor? Um, Boris said is going to be racing for Carl Long, which should be interesting, especially for this car being a new car, and we've seen some. I mean, especially at Daytona, we saw some cars compete up front that don't normally compete, and this may end up being something like that. We've seen Trackhouse go out and contend on a weekly basis, so maybe Boris said, I mean, it's a very, very long shot, but if they got a top 30 finish, that'd probably be a good day for that team. Andy Lally's coming back this race, so that should be exciting to watch. The all these road course guys started suddenly coming back for this race. Kind of feels like the old, mid 2000s, early 2000s when you had a lot of road course ringers show up for these road course races at Sonoma and Watkins Glen, and now extending this out uh, to Coda, and especially with this new car being very, very road course centric. It seems like, and expect it to definitely handle pretty well on the road courses. Joey Hand is another ringer. Maybe they could watch out for. Our best friends over at Eclair Racing. They seem to do good. Pocketing the change. And no Phil hates him, but seemingly they've found a way to exist in the Cup Series. And I guess this week Joey Hand could, potentially. I mean, I don't think it will happen or anything like that, but it could be interesting if they could get a top 30, I guess, in this race. I think other guys to look out for on the road courses. I think Truex could be a threat. I think Denny Hamlin might be somebody to look out for this weekend. Definitely, even Bowman. I think, even though I don't think he's as good as Larson and Elliott, Alex Bowman might be somebody to look out for. Kurt and Kyle Busch. I think both of them definitely. They could definitely be threats on road courses. Both of them have won on road courses, so foresee them both being up front. Tyler Reddick, I think he had a good run last year at this race. Definitely could have been a contender at the end before the rains cut everything
Qualified
short.
on pole.
And he did qualify in pole. I remember that now. Yes, so look out for maybe him to be able to run up front potentially in this race. So we'll see what happens. And I do remember, I think in the off season, Austin Dillon did some racing at Coda. Um, and I think another driver did as well. But I do remember Austin Dillon running a race at Coda during the off season at some point. So could see him potentially, yeah, maybe being somebody that could be in the top 15 or top 10 in this race. And then of course, can't forget Austin Cindric, the tuba player, who played tuba in high school. So you got a lot of respect for him. I did band in high school as well, so learned that about him this week, and definitely like his story. But he's definitely somebody that could be a big threat, especially being somebody who's very cerebral, like him. Very much a thinking man's type of racer. Someone who makes very calculated decisions on the racetrack, and knows how to take care of his car. A lot of guys here, I think, could be factors in this race. But I think, yeah, I'm gonna go with Gumby for this race. I think picking this race, I'll go with Austin Cindric. Um, definitely like him a lot. So I think this is a race for him to lose. So why not go with the hot hand? Well, I don't say he's the hot hand right now, but definitely he's this type of track suits his style for sure. But don't be surprised the Hendrick guys be up front. So we'll see what happens. Um, it's, I guess, a wild card potentially. There's a lot to pick for a wild card, and it's hard, sometimes to pick. But I'm gonna go with Ross Chastain as a wild card. Let's just go with the Trackhouse cars. Continuing to bring up the positive momentum. Maybe can get a top 10 or a top 15 out of this run here at Coda. Um, and the way that things play out on road courses definitely might seem up there at the end. In the top 10, sneaking in a good finish. So that's, I guess, my opinion of this track. We'll see what happens on Sunday, but looking forward to watching these cars go on the first road course race on the schedule.
And hopefully it'll be in the dry. Uh, after last year's debacle that took place at Coda in the Cup Series. I mean, Josh mentioned the ringers. Of course, one of my heroes as a set head. He'll be in the MBM 66. Not sure how competitive they'll be, but they'll be out there. Kaz Gralla will be back with Mayweather's car. Henzemans is going to make his debut for his dad's team after toiling around the Xfinity series all year in the back in various vehicles. Mentioned Joey Hand, of course, former Ford factory driver in the Ganassi Ford GT program. amongst other rides he's had. Former, I think, overall winner of the Rolex 24. A great road racer, great sports car racer for BMW. Former Toyota Atlantic driver too. Once upon a time, along with AJ Allmendinger. AJ Allmendinger, of course, being in this race means you would be a favorite to be able to go and stay with the likes of the Bushes, Truex, Bell, and then some of these other ones would be kind of hard. Um, I'm picking Truex to win this weekend. I think a wild card pick, uh, somebody that's not in the like way up in the points. I'm curious. It's early in the season, so can go and change that over. That's on that cumulative report. Yeah, so that's the cumulative report there. Trying to figure out. That's not what I wanted. Um, Trying to figure out who else I can find. 2002 playoff. Trying to get to. I just want points. I'm not even. I just want the points. The points standing. Trying to look at the point standings there. Yeah, Tyler Reddick, Richard Petty. I mean, yeah. So, well, I mean, in terms of somebody who's a wild card, so I'm doing it on the basis of anybody who's outside top 20 in points. I mean, I'm trying to see that. I think the best option would be Denny Hamlin. So I'm going full Gibbs here this weekend, which is kind of out of my comfort zone. But
That's really a wild card. That's pretty wild.
I mean, it's wild because I'm doing this justification because he's 25th in points, not because he's a road course winner. Um, and I get all that, but he's had a rough start to the year. In the sense of where he's at right now, he's not going to be eligible to be a wild card pick much longer. So I figured I'll sneak in Denny Hamlin when I have a chance. Because other than that, I mean, whatever you have, like if you look at what the points are outside of like the top 20, I mean, I guess I mean, Cindric's 17th in points. He has a win, but he's 17th in points. So in theory, he could be like a construed as a wild card, even though he is a road racer. Um, so things have changed a little bit, but in the end, we will see what they're able to do there in Xfinity. I get to Xfinity, so for 43 for 38, and then you have trying to get to owner points. Let's see how many races. There's a 5. Playoff points. Trying to get over there. Trying to figure out who's where. Regard to this field in the Xfinity series. I'm gonna go through my thing. Go through the ones that. Let's see. I mean, Miguel Paludo is going to be out there in the 88 for Junior Motorsports. Jeremy Clements, of course, always looking for that elusive second win. Sage Carroll will be in the Alpha Prime 44. Will Rogers will be in the RSS 38. Trying to go and see who else. I mean, Bubba Wallace is going to actually be making a rare Xfinity start because he sucks on road courses.
He needs all the
So
help he can get on road
he
courses for
can,
sure.
yeah, yeah. So I That's definitely gonna be somebody to watch. Custard is gonna be in the '07 car again, and then uh trying to see. He's trying to see. I'm gonna pick Allmendinger. I mean, that's really. I'm going chalk. Uh, the wild card pick. The wild card pick. mm, God, wild card pick. I'm gonna go with Miguel Paludo because, I mean, he spends his regular year in the Brazilian stock car series, road course base series, but they do have a couple of ovals. He's got junior motorsports equipment, so he knows he has good equipment. He ran relatively well given the limited appearances he made last year. Figure that's a safe play in general. So AJ Allmendinger and Paludo are my picks for the Xfinity series.
I think as for me, you know, I mean, you took my pick right out of my hand. I wanted to pick Allmendinger. This is the easy pick 'cause he's good at road course racing. But, I was wanting to do it, but, I'm gonna have to go in a different direction here and have to actually look at this. Uh I'll go Ty Gibbs, honestly. And he's won Daytona before, Daytona Road Course. Last year it was his first career win in Xfinity, so why not? Let's go with it. Go with the kid. This year in Xfinity to win the first Xfinity Road Course race of the year, just like last year. Last year at Coda, did he race at Coda last year? No. So this is a new track for him,
Yeah.
uh, and
Kyle
everything.
Busch ran last year, and I think he won.
Yeah, but he still has a good road course record overall in this Xfinity series, and he won Daytona, finished third at Mid Ohio last year, won Watkins Glen also, so another track, um, and everything. So yeah, it fits, and I mean he's done well in this type of racing so far in his career. So yeah, why not? Let's go with it. So yeah, I'll go Ty Gibbs as the pick, and then I think for me as a wild card, let's go with Alex Labay. Why not? He's seems like he's done pretty well on the road courses in the past. Somebody that tried to do testing at Daytona Road Course, back in 2020 when they used that as one of the replacement races, but uh, they got caught. But he seems to be somebody that can get the job done as needed on road courses. So I'll go with Alex Labay as my wild card this week in Xfinity.
A former, what do you call, Pinty Series champion. So a lot of their races are on road courses, street courses, and then very, very short ovals. So he is very capable. My best career finish was at the Roval. So it's not out of the realm the way DGM Racing is showing up this year. Their team seems to be re energized in a lot of ways. And looking better. So possibly Alex Labay can go out there get a win. The truck series race. Um, I go and close out of all that. The XPEL 225 will 39 for 36. Alex Bowman is going to be in the Spire number 7 Chevy. The number 20 truck for trying to go and get the that's number 37. Number 20 truck is going to be Sheldon Creed. So, former Truck Series champion will be back. The 3 truck was withdrawn. Trying to go and look at some of the other people there. Um, Josh, who do you look at for pick to win and wild card for this weekend's Truck Series event.
I think, for me, it's pretty difficult, 'cause there's not a whole lot of road course talent, I feel like, in the Truck Series, but, based on last year, I mean, you could go in a lot of directions here. Um, we'll see what happens. I mean, I think the easy pick is to pick Kyle Busch, so I'm gonna go with him. Probably stole that one right out of your breadbasket there, but Kyle Busch, going out last year, winning Xfinity. Why not go in truck race this year in Xfinity or in trucks? So I'll pick him as the winner. Wild card, I'll go with Kaz Grala. He's done pretty well on road courses in the past, I feel like, and somebody that's pretty underrated overall as a driver. So go with him as my wild card pick this weekend. But yeah, expect probably a lot of crashing overall in this race. I feel like we say that a lot about this series, but I feel like definitely with road courses, definitely there's going to be a lot more incompetence across all three series. This is probably going to be the one that shows the lack of talent the most, I think.
There's gonna be a lot of aji baji, as Calvin Fish would like to say, here this weekend during these three races. Um, my winner for the Truck Series race. Trying to see, there you got the race. So no, I would have picked Priest if he was in there. That's crazy. It's very weird. Not sure what's going on with a couple of these drivers here. In regards to a victor in this race, I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with I'm not even sure about this pick. Um I'm not getting rid of that. So I figured John Hunter gets off the schneid here in 2022 and starts his title defense in the or not title. Why am I saying that? I'm thinking that it was him, but it was Ben Rose going in and starting his 2022 chance to get a title the right way after struggles earlier in the season. In regards to a wild card pick for this Truck Series race, most everybody is wild when you consider Kyle Busch is in the building. Let's see. Kind of. Uh, I'm trying to think of a regular, you know, that'll go and show. Um, going to uh, pick. I'm gonna go pick. Uh, go with Sheldon Creed in the number 20 for Young's Motorsports. Go out there and possibly seek a Truck Series win there this weekend at Circuit America's first win it's had in a while, if that were to happen. So we'll move towards the Formula One Saudi preview. Um, Josh, you have the floor in regards to Saudi.
This is going to be an interesting race. With Saudi so early on the calendar, compared to last year when it was one of the um, end races. I mean, it was the race before the finale, and this is the last race racetrack that Lewis Hamilton won at. Before everything happened. And we came into that track last year with a huge championship battle, and now we don't have that this year, but we do have a lot of different storylines going into this. I mean, if we were going to go off of last year, I mean, I'd probably pick, either one of the Red Bulls or one of the Mercedes to win because I think all four of those drivers could win at this racetrack given the opportunity and the circumstances. But things have changed. We got a new car. seems to be a lot of reliability issues for one of them with Red Bull. Um, Mercedes seems to have a lack of pace right now, but certainly they're not worried about that long term, especially with the way that the regulations are going to work out over the season and everything. So we'll see what happens there. I think I think possibly Ferrari again will be on top this weekend. So two in a row, 2 for 2 so far to start the year for Ferrari. We'll go with Charles Leclerc to win the race overall, and then maybe we see his teammate Carlos Sainz finish in second or wherever he is. But I expect both of them to be competitive. Um, I expect Haas to once again be competitive. We'll see if they can start off the year kind of like how they began their F1 career with uh, Romain Grosjean finishing sixth place and then getting an eighth in China, sixth place at Australia, and getting an eighth in China in 2016 when they debuted, and maybe Kevin Magnussen get a fifth and then possibly another points finish for Haas. Really exciting debut for Haas there. Um, I think other teams to look out for, obviously, McLaren, they've got a lot to recover from this year so far. I mean, they did not have a great debut to their season with the issues that they had at uh, at Bahrain. So I think this year they've got to have a better car um, going into Saudi Arabia. They did not qualify well, so they got to work on their qualifying setup. They've got to work on their race setup as well. They did not really have a good performance. They've got to have a better tire change or tire choice for the race, and they need to be able to get their tires into the right temperature window. I think once they get into the season, I think both of these guys, uh, Daniel Ricciardo, he's kind of in a year where he's got to prove that he earned the seat in McLaren. Then I think with Lando Norris, he's got to be able to prove that he's one of the guys in the young generation that can compete. And if they come out and have two duds to start the year, that's going to be a really hard start to their season. I think you have to look at it in terms of their ability to have a good performance. I mean, other teams, let's see what Alpine does. If Fernando Alonso can get into the points, that would certainly be something. And then I think, Esteban Ocon also, if they are able to finish in the points in their race to start the year, both of them got points at or not at Saudi Arabia, but at Bahrain. So continue the positive momentum going into the year. You bring up the Ferrari customers. I mean, you had Valtteri Bottas. I mean, finished basically in the same spot he probably would have finished last year to start the year. With Mercedes and now with Alfa Romeo, Ferrari customer running Ferrari engines, and then teammate, rookie Zhu Guanyu. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Alfa Romeo teammate to Valtteri Bottas running Ferrari engines.
Yo, Guan Yu.
Yeah, so Yo Guan Yu. Yeah, so uh, really challenging, really a good rookie to start the year. So he's able to go out and finish in the top 10, get points once again. It's a great debut to start the year. So some of these teams, that we expected to kind of be there, to start the year, with the exception of Red Bull. I mean, you thought maybe Aston Martin, and McLaren, really. I think those are the two teams that I would have thought would have done better, but they didn't to start the year. So they've got a lot of work to do to be able to go into this race and finish in a better position and get back into contention for the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship.
Yeah, it's early in the season, but we have to see where some of these teams are at. There will be a little bit of development, albeit, you know, they're flyaway races, so um, there might be status quo in regards to what we saw last week, but I think there's going to be progression. Can there be repeatability from some of these teams like Ferrari, like Alfa Romeo and Haas in regards to their pace? And then also with Mercedes, what do they do at a circuit where it might be a little smoother along with the porpoising issues that I think affected not only them but a lot of the Mercedes customer teams at Bahrain versus Jeddah, which is only a few months old in regards of a racetrack. What they're able to do. I mean, as a pick, I'm gonna go and pick Carlos Sainz to win his first career race on Sunday. Um, I mean, in regards to somebody that could go and surprise the way the cautions worked, I mean, Esteban Ocon was up there, Alonso was up there. There's other things. Oh,
Now recording.
yeah. I mean, as in regards to Ocon and Alonso, some of the people that are up there in last year's race, I think there are some people that could do a similar thing. Maybe Pierre Gasly can be up there. Maybe there'll be Botas or Shogun Yu or Kevin Magnussen. Can Kevin Magnussen go up there and do that again? Those are because of all the cautions, likelihood of accidents um, going on there that can go. Um, we can see what happens with that. But I'm thinking Carlos Sainz goes and gets that first dub. How about you, Josh? What are you looking at for a winner?
I mean, I talked about it earlier. I mean, I think as a winner, go with Charles Leclerc. I think he's definitely a guy that starting the year, um, Ferrari's on point right now, and I look for them to be able to continue to bring their momentum from Bahrain over to Saudi Arabia. Uh, so I expect Ferrari a lot out of Ferrari this season. Now that they've shown that they can win and finish both in high positions, so expect a lot both out of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. We'll see what happens with Red Bull's reliability. So they don't have any issues this time. If they can get a quick turnaround and any fixes or updates or whatever to improve on for this week. Um, they are already behind in the championship, so we'll see what happens there. If they can get back, to at least getting into the podium or possibly a win, as Verstappen had challenged for the win last week or for the lead last week, and didn't come out there on the end that he wanted. But we'll see if it happens this week.
Yeah, it's something that we'll see if Ferrari can continue their um, upswing here early in the season before they go back to Europe and take whatever this magical mystery ride, which is 2023 Formula One season. Um, Going to football briefly, Tyreek Hill got traded to Miami. The Jets had a deal for a few picks to go and possibly go to Kansas City instead. Kansas City gets a deal from Miami. Mike McDaniel, the former 49ers offensive or quarterback, or is like offensive assistant coach or whatever. Like he was like the right hand man for Kyle Shanahan, quality control on the offensive side of the ball, work with quarterbacks, etc. Now he has Tyreek Hill along with Jalen Waddle, and then some of the other pieces they got over there. Some of the other free agent signings they're going in there, getting 4-year 120. So picking my up put some because he would have had to pay income tax instead, and Tyreek Hill is in Florida. You don't have to worry about it. Won't get to even, but they'll be walking with a deal with 5 picks, 2022 first rounder, first, second, fourth, and two fourth this coming year, and then 2 picks in 23. Um, which I mean, it sounds like there's a bunch of teams that were in the mix to try to possibly go and get Tyreek Hill, but him going over there. It's going to be interesting to see how Mike McDaniel utilizes all his weapons he has over there and what they'll be able to do. Um, yeah, Robert Woods going to the Tennessee Titans. Um, oh wow, Malcolm Butler's going back to the Patriots. Um,
Shocking.
yeah, after how it ended. Um, Bobby Wagner. Oh come on,
Who's he
that's
getting signed by?
they're saying he's visiting the Rams, which is
S-
nauseating.
Staying in the NFC
Uh,
West.
oh, I mean, he hasn't signed yet, but the fact is, I hope they would have said the 49ers because put him with Fred Warner and um, what do you call Dre Greenlaw and that linebacker core. That would be really crazy. Um, was it Colin Kaepernick's been in the news and sounds like he has interest from certain teams or people have called 5 teams. So for people that want to hate him, might actually have an in to get back, considering how bad quarterback play is and how bad the quarterback class is this year relative to some other classes that we've had over time. So more to talk about. Obviously, we're getting closer to fantasy football team, I guess, establishment in a sense. So
Got a
see
long way
who's
to
there.
go.
Yeah, we have a long way to go, but we'll be there, and I figure Josh and I will be able to compete together to see who's going to get the big trophy that I put over there in the corner. Now, I used to have it behind me um, before I blurred my screen. I and had stuff in a different place. I had my trophy down here, but or I point up at that one. As for the other league that I'm in, the belt, the ring, those are on the line. So we'll see who's able to get themselves on there here at the end of this year.
Yeah. I want to
Uh,
give a couple of thoughts though on the free agency and everything. All this. This is probably the wildest free agency that we've seen in years. It's just been, the movement that we've seen between teams trading players, teams, doing all sorts of kind of moves. I mean, you didn't even mention Matt Ryan getting traded to Indianapolis for a third round pick. I mean, I thought that was hilarious, mostly because of the reaction from some people. I mean, one of my friends, he told me, Matt Ryan's no longer on the. I mean, he's a Falcons fan, and I'm like, I don't know how you do this, man, because they took the only player that ever got an MVP in franchise history, traded him for just a third round pick to the Colts. They gave up more for Hayden Hurst, and they gave up more for Mohamed Sanu, or they got back more for Mohamed Sanu than they did for Matt Ryan.
yeah, that'll do it. I mean, Matt Ryan is one of the best players ever played for that franchise. Of course, won the MVP, should be a Super Bowl champion. Honestly, him and Julio Jones, but it didn't. It went sideways and got Super Bowl. I know firsthand how that works because the guy who was the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons that day is the head coach of my favorite football team. So, but Matt Ryan going to Indianapolis Colts, solid move. Jimmy Garoppolo's trademark it. I don't know what it is. Hopefully, between now and maybe next week, we might have some more clarity. There are some team that wants him, but there aren't that many options anymore. Um, so I guess we will see what happens in regards to Jimmy Garoppolo's trade market now that Matt Ryan has been traded and all these other people have been traded.
Yeah,
If he has more options
yeah.
there.
Yeah, and by the way,
Um,
I will say for Trent Baalke, we're starting to see the effects, some of the cracks in their, I guess, philosophy because they signed Christian Kirk, right, and got a slot receiver, but they failed to get a number one guy. They lost DJ Chark, and failed. They had a lot of movement in number one wide receivers. Between Allen Robinson, um, you had Amari Cooper today. You had Tyreek Hill. I mean, those are three guys that they could have picked up either in free agency or via trade, and the failure to get a number one guy, Trent Baalke. Come on, man. Yeah, you got to be able to give something for Trevor. Got to get him weapons, and just haven't been able to acquire enough weapons for for Trevor Lawrence. Trent Baalke has he has not. So we'll see how well it works, and they're more than likely going to have to draft a big guy at wide at position 33 in the draft, or possibly have to trade back into the first round in the NFL draft to get a big guy to compete on the outside. And Trent Baalke does not have a good history drafting wide receivers, and also usually first year wide receivers, unless they're an alpha dog, like DK Metcalf or Julio Jones. They usually take a year to get settled into the league. So we'll see what happens, but not looking so great for the wide receivers. I guess roster construction for Trent Baalke there.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, Trent doing his thing. EJ Jenkins comes to mind in regards to his drafting of wide receivers in the NFL draft, and we saw how well that worked out for the Niners. Um, but hopefully, the Niners trade Jimmy Garoppolo, or are in a position to do so. Jacksonville can go and get their number one wide receiver. It's crazy. Allen Robinson signed with the LA Rams. Not who did Amari Cooper end up signing with?
He got traded. Who did he get? He got traded, but I forgot now.
Oh yeah, that's right. He got traded to oh God, whatever. Now I'm forgetting where. NFL free agency tracker. Wagner is only Tyreek Hill free agent. Yeah, and the fact is, Kansas City got two firsts, or you got a first, a second, a fourth in this year's draft, and then two picks in next year's draft. Mahomes wasn't a happy. Yeah, I'm sure he wasn't. Um, yeah, it was definitely not easy. Um, get into. Let me get to here. You have Neil. Ethan. You know, Garrett Will. Let's see, Derek Stingley. Kenny Pickett slips all the way to okay.
Yeah,
Um,
small hands, Kenny.
yeah, small hand. I'm gonna say that, but if you can go and spin it, I don't think it really matters what the hell big or small your hands really are. Um, updates. Yeah, so that's that for football. Josh, what were you doing on the sim side, iRacing, or other gaming platforms here before we get to the show close?
Of course, as always, with the sim side, been got back into iRacing a little bit last weekend. Um, yeah, I mean, I mentioned on a previous pod, that I got a win at Tsukuba Circuit in the Miatas. That was last week, and then I think at the beginning of this week I did a run at Daytona in the Production Car Challenge, which is a 4-car class series with Ford Mustang GT 500, the Miatas, Volkswagen Jetta, and I'm forgetting what the other car is. I think it's a Pontiac Solstice. So it's a pretty like entry level class for multi-class endurance racing. They usually last around like 25-minute races, I think, 30-minute races. So ran that at Daytona. And then they use the nighttime Daytona, so you started at like kind of like right at sundown where the sun's getting just about to set, and then raced into the night. So they had the time lapse going on. So haven't experienced that in iRacing, and that was a little bit difficult because I wasn't used to that. Normally, with iRacing, the lighting is pretty static. Usually, there's no time change in the lighting or anything like that. So that was a little bit challenging, having to kind of figure out where the lines are with visibility and everything. So with the visibility changes and stuff. It was a little bit more difficult to get the exact breaking points in Daytona, and especially in the horseshoe. That's where was losing a lot of time there, running there, but had a little bit of difficulty on that. Didn't get the best finish. Spun out a couple times, and I think I finished like sixth in my class. I don't remember where I finished overall, so it wasn't the greatest run, but a bit of a different learning experience with the visibility or the visual changes, I guess, with respect to being able to see. So I guess it's a little bit more realistic now with the time change throughout the night. If you're racing at night at Daytona, this weekend probably plan to do some Talladega at the 87 car. Always fun, being able to, you talked about plate racing earlier in the show. I mean, this is real super speedway racing when you have unrestricted cars and you're running like 210, 220 into the corners, and you're actually having to lift, not because you're trying to avoid running at the back of somebody, but which is the case, but because you run 220 into the corner like that, you're probably going to spin out because you don't have a whole lot of downforce on there. So takes a lot of driving there for sure. So that'll be fun. Might try out Coda. Haven't downloaded it yet, but might try it out with Xfinity or the Cup car. See how it runs. Probably have to learn a lot, but need to probably pick up some more tracks here on this the service, and try out and run these cars on there. Got to be able to try out new tracks and everything, get better as we go along, and then probably maybe I might do Indy cars at the new Phoenix Raceway. New being the currently out that they have, should be interesting. But that's Phoenix. It's a interesting track for IndyCar racing for sure. Um, I mentioned a lot of classes, and of course, it's that's what I like about iRacing is the the variety of classes and tracks that you can compete on, and the different people that you can compete with. So always an opportunity to try out something new, or to continue to better your craft in various series. So that's what I like about iRacing. And console side, still trying to go through Horizon Zero Dawn and run through the story and play it, so then I can play the new Horizon for Forbidden Zero or Forbidden West on PlayStation. So yeah, that's what I'm doing with the gaming stuff. Uh, Try to stream. I have to reset up my stream because I think on my streaming service that I use to stream or my program, I have to reconnect my account. So got to do that. Got to put that on the to-do list for the weekend. So let you know when the streaming is, and as always, uh, streaming at Twitch TV/UCLO2. So where you can find all my streaming, regardless of games at, and it's where you can watch. So yeah, go follow that, and let you know when to go live.
My fault on that. You can find me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. You can find us at Gripstrip Pod on Twitter. We have a new Facebook, or I mean, a YouTube page. Josh made that Gripstrip Podcast on YouTube. So now our shows will end up being live, or be on video at least on there instead of just the audio, which was there on the YouTube page prior to that. You can find the Gripster podcast anywhere there are podcasts, basically Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Podbean, Pandora, Stitcher, uh, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. So that's um that's the places where you can find the Gripster podcast. We thank you for listening to the Gripster podcast this week. We'll be back next week to discuss all the moves that have taken place and what's liable to go and happen, considering the circumstances of going and trading arms, or going and trade all these trading plays. And then of course you have baseball too, so that's another thing going on along with the racing. So we'll see how it all goes. For Josh, as always, thank you, brother, for doing your thing and carrying the load there for a few minutes to help me out, even though really what I'm doing right here isn't helping either. Um, for Josh, I'm Phil. Take care of one another. do the best you can and make sure that we're doing what's necessary to progress in all different areas. All right. Take care and have a good night here from the GSP.